Ooh!
Celebrate good times. Come on, Artie. Woohoo!
Whoa! Let's celebrate.
Let's celebrate.
There's a party going on right here. The Democrats won.
They won. Joe Biden.
Celebrate good Biden. Come on. I can't believe Joe Biden won the first of 4 elections to be the president of the United States.
I can't believe that Kamala Harris is now the first black, Asian, and woman vice president ever. They have made history.
They really have. When is the other 600 and, however many other Americans like me get to vote?
What the hell are you talking about, Artie? We voted on November 3rd.
No, you had your chance, and now, there were something like 300 million Americans that didn't vote, like me.
Artie, voting day was November 3rd. You can't vote after that. You could have voted months and months before this election. You didn't vote on November 3rd?
Well, no, I thought...
How did I vote and you not? What did you do when we went in there? Just stand around?
Well, I went up there and they said I wasn't registered to vote in the district anymore, so I just said what I assumed that meant that I had to wait until the next election.
How are you... Artie, you were an elected official. How do you not know how these rules work, and how do I?
Well, I don't know. They didn't pay me to learn how I got elected. They paid me to make incest law.
Well, you missed your chance, Artie. I'm sorry. Joe Biden is the president, no thanks to you.
Well, I would have voted for Donald Trump. I thought the rest of us would get to vote for Donald Trump, next month or something.
Well, that's why Biden won, because all of you Trump supporters are retarded.
Hey, we're not retarded.
You're the product of incest.
Well, you voted for someone with dementia. How does that make you feel?
Well, I mean... fuck you.
It's all
We
fraud
won.
anyway.
We won.
It's all fraud. The votes are fake. You mean to tell me you can have more votes in Wisconsin than voters? Bullshit.
Artie, I don't have time for your conspiracy theories ever since you started to get into that QAnon bullshit. You were elected. You were an elected official.
We call ourselves QAnon.
Go to your room.
Oh, so I can go to my room so I can look up more conspiracy theories?
Yeah,
That's what
go to
you
your
want
room and look
it?
up conspiracy theories and do things that a little kid would do, because that's what you're sounding like.
Yeah, well, guess what? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, guess what? Nancy Pelosi is going to make Kamala Harris the president instantly because Joe Biden's retarded.
I don't even know. Yeah, well, Donald Trump's going to jail. He's going to defect to Russia.
Oh, Donald Trump will never sit behind a jail
He's going to
cell.
prison. He tampered with an election.
Oh, bullshit. The only person who tampered with the election is the Biden crime family.
Yeah, and your butt buddy, Donald Trump, and all of it. Or should I say Donald Drumpf? Coffee, Artie? Coffee.
Oh, yeah, he's a Cheeto. Well, at least the president grabs adult women's pussies, not like Joe Biden sniffing granddaughter's hair.
All he did was sniff somebody's hair. What does that have to do with grabbing pussies?
He's a pedophile.
You
At
just
least
like Donald Trump because he gave you the right as a white male to grab any pussy that you want. And you know what? You can grab this pussy anytime you want, but nobody else. That's sexual assault.
Oh, bullshit, you social justice feminist warrior, you crybaby liberal snowflake.
I can't believe I raised you.
Are you really going to let Donald Trump and Joe Biden come between our relationship, really?
No, I'm not, because Joe Biden won. Maybe if Trump won, maybe I would have.
I thought we were better than that. I thought you actually loved me.
Well, Artie, your brain's a fucking soup, so what good is your opinion? Your brain has been turned to soup and then turned back. You really think you have the ability to make a rational fucking thought?
Well, if Helen Keller was allowed to vote, then I'm allowed to vote.
You didn't vote! You were too retarded to know when to vote!
Yeah, well, then it's a moot point, okay? You get to have your dementia patient president while Latricia's world crumbles around us.
And that's the only way I'd have it.
Hello and welcome to MOATAIF. It's November 7th, 2020, and we finally have a president-elect, folks. Joseph R. Biden Jr., the former vice president, elected president.
He was elected
today.
as well. What's the R stand for? What's the R in Joe Biden's name?
His middle name is Robinette.
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., the 46th president of the United States.
It's pretty fucking.
I didn't think it was gonna happen.
I don't know why. I didn't. You know, dude, I didn't think it was gonna happen either. I thought there was maybe a 10% chance that Joe Biden was gonna win. Whatever 538 said that he had a 90% chance of winning and Donald Trump had a 10% chance, I just immediately assumed it was Biden who had the 10% chance.
Oh, exactly.
But like 538 said after the Hillary letdown, there was a 10% chance.
Yeah, right. They're like, well, there was a 10% chance he could win, and well, this was the 10% chance.
Exactly. But we have been waiting in suspense. It's been 4 days now since the election. It doesn't even seem like, it feels like just the world went into just a timeless mode where we were just kind of waiting to see who it was going to be.
I can't tell you how many times I refreshed like the United States map, the 2020 election results on Google, how many times I tuned into MSNBC over the last few days.
I would wake up at like 1 a.m, check it, wake back up at 3 a.m, even though I know nobody's counting votes in the middle of the fucking night.
But they should have been.
They should have been up around the clock counting those votes.
Right? Why weren't they? Why did it take so long?
Well, I guess there's no motherfucking hurry. Like, Congress ain't no hurry. They have recesses all the fucking time.
Right, and they want to. I appreciate that they want to have the vote accurate and legally counted, in whatever fashion that requires, especially when Donald Trump is, already trying to delegitimize the vote and claim fraud and, just take it to the courts. Despite all of that, Joe Biden won this election.
Yeah. I've been noticing that I've been focusing more on the fact that Trump lost than the fact that Joe won. I'm really proud of Joe. Like you said, this was his fourth time.
Right.
It took him four times, and that's just one of those things where if at first you don't succeed, try again. Joe Biden's proof.
Right, and as they were talking about, on MSNBC, the man is has dignity. He is going to be a president that, regardless of whether you voted for Joe Biden or support Joe Biden, he's a president that I think we will all be able to respect, which is not something that I think we could all say about Donald Trump.
Well, I would have thought that about Obama, that we all could have respected. Because Obama and Biden are how you would expect they act how presidents should act. They behave like a president. Even George Bush behaved like a president.
Right.
People gave him so much grief just because he said words fucking wrong and he mispronounced things, like.
But even he as like an idiot was a presidential man who
diplomatic.
Right. We could respect as just a human despite his policies.
Yeah, dude. I'm so fucking happy this is happening. I'm so happy that we fell into the hopefully not nightmare timeline anymore.
I completely agree. And, so on election night, of course, I voted, as you know, and as we've talked about on the show, early in person.
I know we'll talk about your voting story a little bit, but on election day, all I had to do was sit down and watch the election results. So most of the day, I just spent sitting there waiting, hoping that things were going well. You know, turning on the news, seeing what MSNBC would say every now and again. But when there's no vote, there's nothing to say. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The vote starts coming in at 7 p.m. in some of these states, and I'm getting ahead of myself. You had a bit of an issue on election day.
Yes, I did.
And this is something, so, you know, I think one of the big takeaways from this, for me, now that the election's over, the importance of early voting can't be stated more.
No, I should have early voted.
And, you know, for months, and this is not to shame you specifically, but, you know, for months, everybody in the media was saying, you know, check your registration, make sure you're registered to vote. They're removing voters from the polls. You know, early vote, take your vote once you get your ballot, make sure you fill it out properly, make sure you put it back and don't mail it back, put it in the ballot, you know, all these things. There was like a huge, to their credit, huge and clearly successful media campaign. But I think it goes, you know, in your experience, which we'll talk about, but also Bree and Micah are friends. Of course, Brianna and Nicole Reagan had a similar experience wherein they just did not check their voter registrations and assumed that everything was fine, and come to find out Micah was still registered in Cleveland, so he was unable to vote at all in the election.
Wait, Micah didn't vote?
Well, yeah, because they waited until election day.
They would have had to drive all the way to Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly. So there was no, and obviously...
Oh, that's my worst nightmare.
Right. So he did not get to vote. A black man in Donald Trump's America in 2020, in the wake of the George Floyd protests, was not able to vote.
I bet he was devastated.
I would be.
I would be too.
So what happened to you?
Well, I knew that my voter registration was not for where I live, and I was gonna update it, but I knew that it took time for it to update, and once it got like 2 months before election day, I was like, there's no point in updating this now. I just figured it'd be no big deal if I had to drive back to Springfield to vote. And my plan was to early vote anyway, but just... whoever wants to fucking drive to Springfield? I know I sure don't. It's only like an hour away, but I never want to fucking go there. So anytime I could have did it, I didn't. So it gets to election day, and I'm terrified that I'm going to be voter suppressed because my ID does not match my voter registration. And I didn't tell you this, Zach, which was making me even more nervous, but I was nervous because I was really nervous I wasn't going to get to vote. And then I was nervous you were going to be mad at me.
I wouldn't be mad.
But you would be disappointed, which is worse.
I wouldn't be mad, but I was like, oh my God. I like went out and told Taylor, I was like, I don't think RJ is going to be able to vote. And I was like, I don't think there's any way I can help.
When I had my mishap that we're going to get to shortly.
Yes.
Oh, no. Yeah. Well, there was no, I would have walked to fucking Springfield to vote. But my ID was expired.
Oh.
But so that morning I just went out and got it renewed. It wasn't a big deal at all. So when I'm driving to Springfield and I'm about 20-30 minutes out from Columbus, and my car starts violently shaking. And I have a flat fucking tire like between Columbus and Springfield, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this happening on election day? Because a week before that, both of my front tires were flat, and they fixed them apparently, but for some reason I have a flat now. I hadn't paid rent yet, so I didn't really have money to spend to call and get it towed or whatever. So I spent my rent money anyway doing it. So I call and get this guy to come out and help me just get my tire off of my car, because I have a spare tire. I can put it on there, but they put the fucking things on way too tight, and I can't do it myself. So this Republican asshole, I tell him, I don't think I've made it to the West Jefferson exit yet. He's like, okay, I'll be out there in a minute. Didn't really question where I was at all. Didn't ask me for a mile marker or anything. And I get a call about a half hour later saying, where are you? I'm driving. I'm almost 670 now. I haven't seen anybody. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, he's like, are you sure you're over there? And I'm like, well, let me look at my GPS. And I was like, okay, I'm between this exit and this exit. And he's like, so you're past the West Jefferson exit. Okay, I'll be there. And this just sets this guy off. And I don't know if I told you all this, Zach, because it was just so much at the time.
No.
So this guy, you know, shows up probably about 20. He's not that far away from me. He's only about 15 minutes out. And so he gets up and he's livid. He's like, you see that sign over there? And it's like probably like 500 feet back. Mm-hmm. That's a mile marker. Should have walked to it and told me. And I was just like, sorry. I was just pissed off because I'm like, I'm trying to go fucking vote. This is ruining my fucking day. Right. I was like, sorry. Just get my fucking tire off. So he gets it off, and we successfully changed it. But then we get into his truck, and he tells me, he's like, that'll be 160 because you made me drive to the other end of the earth to get to you. He charged me $160 fucking dollars to change my tire. Like, what the fuck am I gonna say? He already did it. I thought it was gonna be like $50. I paid $75 a few days before this to get my car towed, and he charged me $160 to change my fucking tire.
That's ridiculous.
So I'm livid.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I would have been absolutely in the same situation. I would have been cucked into paying it, but in my heart,
he knew I was pissed.
In my heart, I want to say I would stand up and be like, well, no.
Well, I would have thought that too, and I have stood up for myself in situations like that before, but I didn't, because he was a scary Republican Trump man, you know, like on election day. And I was like, obviously I'm wearing, that famous cat hat that you gave me like 10 years ago. I was wearing that. I was just a little cuck boy to this man. He thought he could pull one over on me, thought I didn't know how to change my tire. I do know how to change my tire. Fuck. So thank God. I mean, I had a plan in place. Abigail was voting while this was all happening. I just drove on back roads back to my house, and she drove me to Springfield. And so now I'm to the point where I'm like real nervous, because I'm like, I hope they fucking let me vote, because my registration doesn't match up. But really, I walked in, it was so easy. They scanned my old ID, and they're like, okay, sign right here. Sign my name, and they're like, okay. I was like, so I'm good to vote? Yeah. They're like, yeah, we just scan your ID, and your ID tells us, it goes through a computer system, and that tells us if you're allowed to vote. And you are. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's how, there was nobody in there. Like two old people walked in, like in the middle of me voting, but that was it. And then I cast my vote for, straight D all the way down.
Same here.
And, yeah, well, obviously. And then voting for Joe Biden, I didn't think it would give me any sort of feeling, but I got chills rumbling like from the top of my head down to my feet. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm really doing this right now. I'm going to vote Trump out of office.
Right.
It was an amazing feeling.
Same here. I always save it for last. I mean, this is only the second presidential election, but even in the primary, when I'm filling out the ballot, I always fill in president last. And I recorded it. It's in my vlog. My latest.
I wanted to, but I didn't know if you were allowed to do that.
Yeah. Well, technically no, but what are they gonna? I mean, like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I had my phone open looking at the list of the people I was supposed to vote for.
Right. So, I mean, okay. So then election, my ballot was, like, approved on, like, October 26th, like, 2 days after I turned it in. So all of election day, I just was, waiting for the results, like I said. And they start coming in, and it honestly, instantly, to me, I don't know about you, instantly started to feel like 2016 all over again.
Yep, definitely.
Now they'd been preparing us for this. Like they were like, now the first vote that comes in might be heavily Republican because it's going to be mostly the same day vote, and most of the same day vote's going to be Republican. Blah blah blah. You know, they went on and on about it on MSNBC. They really in this election, more than anything I've ever seen, let their bias be shown.
I completely agree. I thought the same exact thing. They really knew who their audience was, and you could tell all of the reporters really wanted Trump out of there.
Right. But at the same time, it didn't make me be like, oh, they're not telling me facts. You know what I mean? It was still...
It was more just they knew who their audience was. They knew, like, what we cared about and what we wanted to hear. Like,
right.
Or know about.
They constantly went back to Steve Kornacki, who constantly was trying to make us feel better about where the remaining mail-in ballots were coming in, and like how Joe Biden was still on track to like win the presidential election, including states like Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania and places that didn't really look at all like that was ever going to be the case. And
real quick, I thought it was interesting because, we're talking about their bias and Steve Kornacki. There was a time where he's like, if this happens, that won't be good for us. I mean him.
Right.
Like, he really, like, let it slip.
Right. I love it. And, I got to say to the whole MSNBC crew, I really enjoyed the coverage this year. I haven't watched any MSNBC for because I don't have actual cable at all this year, so I haven't been watching any of their coverage at all. But I watched it on election night, and then for the last, for the rest of the fucking week until today.
You've been watching it still? Keeping up with it?
Oh yeah, I've been pretty much watching it every day, just because they every day, and at that point it started to become kind of like, are they just doing this to
for ratings and shit.
For ratings, yeah, because all of a sudden it's 3 days later and they're still any minute we could get results from Pennsylvania that will declare Joe Biden the winner of the presidency. So I want to see that, I want to be
yeah, they really kept you in.
So I'm watching it for fucking days. I'd check in every few hours, just to see what was going on. But the main thing I want to say is that I've been having some very not superstitious, but as you can tell, because you can see me, but the viewers of course can't. I'm wearing blue. I've got blue socks on, and I'm wearing a Joe Biden button. And I've been wearing the same outfit, not the same outfit, but the same combination since Election Day. Plus, I've got that blue porch light that I was given by that lady from the Democratic Party. So that's been on nonstop since Election Day. And I don't want to say that I pulled Georgia over the line, but...
I mean, that was my first thought. When you texted me, because you're the one who let me know that Joe Biden was the president, I was just heading out to lunch today. And that was my first thought. I was like, his blue shirts did it. It really worked. And
honestly,
I've been wearing this too.
I've been surprised by how many blue shirts I even have to begin with, but I did start running out. I do have a lot of blue socks. I haven't donated any money to Joe Biden's campaign except to buy one sticker pack, because I couldn't go through the devastation of being that loyal and supportive of a candidate again after Hillary Clinton's devastating loss. So I didn't have any other Biden-Harris merch. So I'm wearing a Mike Dabrowski button.
A button stolen from Mike Dabrowski in 2012. Yeah. I think we can admit it now. It's been eight years.
Right, and he's not listening. For the viewers at home, it's the classic Obama logo, the sunrise logo, but with a black and white profile photo of Joseph R. Biden, the 46th President of the United States.
God, that feels so good to say.
Yes, it does.
These next 4 years, it's going to feel so empowering to walk down the street, I think. Because any fucking person, who I would, who would typically be wearing a Make America Great Again hat, I want them to feel fucking stupid stupid.
Right.
I want history to really come down on these people and be like, yeah, this was the retard party. Remember that time America went full retard for the last, or for 4 years, you know?
Right. I completely agree, but I gotta say, there are people, including members of Taylor's family that are still sharing fake news, even though things that have been disproven and fact checked, they're still being shared because people just don't trust fact.
Yeah, for some
anymore.
reason they trust their own fact checking things. I guess like their fact checker is the president. It's their daddy. Their daddy
Right.
fact checks everything. But what happens when your daddy is fucking disgraced?
Right. And, he's saying, well, they're going to have to drag me out of here. Well, I'd love to see it.
I would love to see him be executed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd love to see the guillotines pulled out of museums and put to good use.
You don't want to make a new guillotine. You want to use like a one that was used for somebody else.
Yeah, that's like rusty.
Ooh.
Well,
Maybe
and
not
here's
go
the
all the
other
way
thing.
through. Like maybe have him die of like a terrible infection.
Right, days later with like half of his head still hanging on.
God.
But here's the problem though, and I guess despite all of the good news, there is a bit of an issue. We didn't win the Senate.
Yeah.
We kept control of the House, losing a few seats, but we didn't win the Senate. So that means I think there's going to be a lot of pissing on people in the next couple of years because Mitch McConnell is going to be the Senate Majority Leader.
Majority Leader, yep.
And he's not going to let anything go through ever as he does.
Well, I'm hoping that Joe would actually, because at the end of the day, Joe's pretty moderate. The Trump people like to paint him as a super left person, but I think he could push policies that the Republicans could agree with too.
I certainly hope so, but I mean,
it doesn't make any sense to have a fucking political system where if one party is in power, you literally just can't do anything.
but that's what Mitch McConnell did to Barack Obama for 8 years.
Well, I know he did it.
So like, why wouldn't he do it again?
He would. I guess, it's naive of me to be hopeful about politics.
And I mean, he and John Boehner were the reason liberal news began.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for certain he's going to be the reason it returns for a third iteration, coming up here.
Yeah, it would be nice to see like if we could get like a community piss thing going on. But like you were pissed on by 5 people. And you send him pictures of every single pissed on photo of him and say collectively there's about a gallon of piss dropped on your picture.
Yeah, I think we need to, in the new iteration, you piss on the photo, but instead of flushing it, you get it out, you dry it out, then you include it in the file. You include it in the letter that you send.
We've talked about doing that, in the first iteration. I guess we were probably just afraid of the ramifications of sending somebody piss.
And we also talked about like wiping our ass with.
Yeah, definitely.
With
we got really barbaric.
I just think one of the weirdest things that's going to come out of this is we're going to have Mitch McConnell in the Senate. We'll have most likely Nancy fucking Pelosi in the House still, and the Supreme Court, which has now been packed with all of the conservative judges of Donald Trump.
Yep.
So what can we realistically expect from at least the first 2 years of the Biden administration? What do you think they can actually get anything done? Like, was the obstructionism of the Obama era just because Obama?
I don't think we can expect much out of policy, but I feel like Joe's presidency is really going to be more of pushing the country in a different direction. You know, I think it's almost like Trump was like our, you know, our angsty emo years, you know, like we tried that out and then we're like, nah, let's actually like do something else now. And I'm hoping that like it's going to be more of a social change in America than, you know, I really don't think he's going to get any real policy done. And you know, he doesn't really have that much reason to do that because he's not planning on running for a second term anyway. So,
or so they say.
I mean, if he does, that's going to be really snake move, but but you know, I feel like presidents want to be able to go, these are the policies I did my first 4 years. You could expect 4 more years of that.
Right.
But if he doesn't have that to go for, I think he should just chill.
He said he wants to restore the soul of our nation. And I believe
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I feel like that's what he's going to do.
I believe of all the people that ran, he was certainly the most apt at being able to do that. So I think maybe we made the right choice.
Maybe we did, because even if Bernie got in there, Bernie is polarizing.
Yeah.
He's polarizing to Democrats and Republicans.
Right. And they made Joe Biden polarizing, but Joe Biden himself was not polarizing.
No, he was the safe bet. He was like the safe pick, and like I said, he's pretty moderate. He's not like a super socialist like Bernie.
Right. And we won with the support of a lot of Republicans, including like John Kasich and like, other retired Republican senators who stepped down before they decided to denounce Donald Trump, but eventually did at least denounce Donald Trump. In the next few days, though, because the election technically isn't finalized, they've projected that he's going to win. What do you now, today, November 7th, think is going to happen? Do you think Donald Trump is going to, continue fighting this?
Yes, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's certainly gonna.
I think he's gonna claw and grasp for straws until he's literally forced out of there. I think, and it's so strange to me because I couldn't imagine Trump accepting a loss, because that's a real hit on his ego, which is what he lives on. How could he think he's the biggest and greatest person to ever? I mean, unless I think he's gonna, for the rest of his life, he is going to try to destroy the institutions of America. I think he's just going to be a bitter old fucking man who just bitches, and he's going to have a crowd of people who still love him and still follow him and get his advice on politics.
They're going to say, he's going to say, at least for the rest of time, that this was an illegitimate election. I don't think he's ever going to say that it was a legitimate election.
No, but it pisses me off because we kept saying it was an illegitimate election when he was elected because the NSA and FBI both said that our election was tampered with by outside forces.
But nobody said that this time around. And
strangely, there's like no mentionings of it at all. Like, we also, we got hacked last time.
In 2016, ultimately, after, of course, there were, the people who did like the emailing all of the electors and trying to beg them not to vote for Donald Trump in the Electoral College, and there were petitions going around. But ultimately, once it became clear that Donald Trump was going to be the president, we just accepted it. I mean, we were devastated. I cried.
You and I did, yeah.
But I mean, I think most Democrats did too. I think, we accepted that we were all curious about what happened with, like, they were talking about Russia, and they were like, the election might have been compromised. And we're like, well, that's kind of weird. We should get to the bottom of that. But the votes that are there and the way that the Electoral College works, Donald Trump is the president. We don't question it.
For Democrats, it was more of like the last 4 years. Certainly the first 2 years after were like, how the hell did we let this happen? How did how did we fail as a country? I think that was what we've been focusing on. And it doesn't really seem like we've learned much, but I just think the American people came to their senses.
Yeah, and I just want to say on MSNBC, they kept saying, like, what is the big takeaway from this election? And they're like, we need to realize, like, Donald Trump was not a fluke. Like, he does represent a lot more of America than we maybe realize. But I'm like, we human beings, and especially at least the people in Ohio, know that Donald Trump had no lack of support there, and had
exactly right
undying love and support in Ohio, and from a lot of Americans. And it was no question that there was going to be a massive turnout, to me, for Donald Trump. I had hoped that there would be more votes for Joe Biden in states like Florida that, maybe earlier in the night on election night they would have been able to call it. But ultimately, we still won, so
yeah, who cares? Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me too to see that, like, isn't this like I haven't seen this on any article or anything, but is this the most turnout we've ever seen in an election?
Yeah, they're saying so, and they're also saying that Joe Biden broke Hillary Clinton's record, which broke Barack Obama's record for most votes for any presidential candidate ever.
So yeah, and that just means overall more people voted in this election than have ever voted before.
Right.
Percentage-wise too, like,
I don't know because they haven't finished counting, but they are projecting record
right.
turnout. But like, in states like Georgia, like Stacey Abrams was talking about, they've been having a massive drive to register people since, like, especially 2018. And I just realized, because I'm now updating my registration, now that my vote's been counted, I'm updating my registration to Georgia instantly, because there's Georgia Senate runoff elections down here, which
that's exciting.
A whole other thing. But I get to vote in those. But the reason it's actually really easy to register to vote in Georgia right now, because whenever you go to, like, update your license or anything, and if you want to register to vote, it's instant. So on Tuesday, when I go in to register to get my new driver's license, at the same time I will be registering to vote, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, how are you able to work in Georgia if you don't have a Georgia ID? Are you still allowed to work there with?
Yeah,
as an Ohio resident,
because you're a U.S. citizen, it's just your ID.
Oh, okay, well. I guess that's not related to the topic at all, but whatever.
Well, no, but I mean, it was, so ultimately, I think the big takeaways, going into future elections, one thing we can all, as listeners, check your voter registration. They do things, it's easy to forget. And listen, you hear it and you're like, well, it's not going to happen to me. But it happened to two people I know. I mean, not voter registration specifically, but things on election day go wrong.
Yeah, and you definitely should early vote. I've early voted pretty much. I think in every election I voted in, I've early voted up until this one.
Right.
And it's so easy. It's so convenient.
The first time you had issues.
Yeah, it's much easier to go vote before election day. There's no hassle whatsoever, and you feel confident going into, oh, okay, I already voted.
Right. And it's really interesting, because I think maybe we should, at least as Democrats, we should certainly start thinking of it more as election season instead of just election day, because really election
that's a
day
good thought.
is the last day of voting.
Yeah, that's a really good thought.
So I feel like the big things here, make sure, and when people actually say check your registration, at least before these registration deadlines. Make sure you're actually registered before the registration deadline, or you're ruined. Like, unfortunately, our friend Micah didn't check his registration before the Ohio registration deadline, period. Couldn't update his registration.
Yes, and realize that where you vote is entirely dependent on where you live. Each precinct, depending on what city you live in, hundreds of precincts, possibly, and there's each different polling locations. Even when I went to go vote, the old woman who walked in went to the wrong polling location.
Right.
Like, that's something that you gotta keep up on. You gotta know where to go.
Right.
That being said, I also think that if you're registered to vote, you should be able to vote anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true, but it's also because, of course there are different stipulations because it's like, oh, well, you live in this one township that has a different representative or different ballot initiatives or whatever. But regardless, people should be it should be easier to vote. There should be nationwide same-day voter registration. So people like Micah, who didn't check their voter registration, not to shame him, but can show up and vote on election day. And
really just using him as an example.
Exactly, right. And it's important also to, before these, big voter registration deadlines and early vote deadlines, if somebody like Micah hadn't updated their voter registration and found out he was still registered in Cleveland, request a mail-in ballot. But you didn't do it because you didn't look it up in time. You know what I mean? So going forward, when these things happen, we now have evidence to show that you got to do it. But at the same time, we won, so fuck it.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. You can do that next time, Micah, or people like Micah.
It's just really important to vote, folks. Still, at the end of the day, you can see that these elections came down to like fucking thousands, not like tens of thousands, but
thousands,
thousands.
It really
of
makes
votes.
a difference.
You have to go vote, people.
If you didn't vote because you didn't want to vote, not because you were in a Micah situation. I feel like we're talking about Micah a lot, but shame on you. Shame on you, truly. Probably stop listening to this podcast.
Right. This podcast supports democratic ideals. Or at least the ideals of democracy.
Yeah. If that wasn't clear already. I mean, we do support the Democratic Party, but
ultimately, unlike the Trump people, it's not a cult. If Donald Trump had ran as a Democrat, I wouldn't have voted for him.
Fuck no, I wouldn't have.
I'm smart enough to know that the Democratic Party can and might not always be the best choice, but unfortunately, they have been for my entire life.
Same here. Yep. Well, I mean, we're the same age, so of course.
How I'm gonna vote.
Yep. Pretty much. Democrats, I think the only real difference is that Democrats can be kind of dumb. Or just really just kind of clueless. Not necessarily dumb, because they're usually really smart people, but just they don't really know how the world operates or what America is thinking. But they're not bad people. The Republicans in power, or lots of Republicans who try to get to power, are just evil. Truly. So if you pick somebody who's kind of dumb versus somebody who's just flat out evil, there's a fucking clear choice.
Exactly, and it's to pick a dumb idiot all day long.
Yeah, Sleepy fucking Joe. He's our president. Hell yeah.
And I'm proud of it. Congratulations, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's going to do it for this special bonus election episode. Obviously, there's more to unfold in history, but at least now we know. Now, the future episodes of this show coming out, they're a little behind, so give it a minute to catch up to.
Yeah, we might still be asking you who the president is. If you guys know, we know now. This was recorded on the day we're uploading it or around it, so we know now. It'll catch up.
Congratulations, Joe Biden. Continue counting the votes. I want to know the exact margin of people that let this happen. It's going to look like 3 to 4 million, but it's going to be exciting to know. But until then, stay out.
Death to every fucking Republican.